Welcome to LivAnimated.com. Let's learn something new. Today we're going to be going over rig to ARTv2. I'm going to open up a character, bring that character in to our Maya scene, make sure that character is set up correctly, open up a new Maya scene, reference in that character, and then start laying out the rig. So let's jump right into it. Have your Maya scene open. This can be a completely new scene. We are going to navigate to our character, just where it exists right now. So let's go to our character. And you're going to want to name the file, if you haven't, just name it mesh, _mesh, whatever the name of it is that you have currently. So here's the character. Some of the things to keep in mind, let's go into our preferences right quick. So go to Windows and go to General Editors. No, go to Settings and Preferences, and then go to Preferences. We want to go to Settings. Make sure this is at 30 frames per second because that's what we're going to be animating to. Might as well get in good habit of setting that now. And then make sure your Z is up. Z is up is important for when you start exporting your character. If it's Y up with your character, that's fine. Change it to Z up. What that's going to do in most cases, it's going to take your character, and your character is going to be like this on the ground. That's fine. As you can see, it has like a -90 on here. That may be 0 for you when you bring in your character because, you know, it was brought in at Y up. So what we're going to do, I'm going to undo this, but what you're going to do is take that and add it to a +90. Once it's a +90, your characters are going to be standing straight up the way you want it to. Next thing you're going to do is hold down the space bar and go to modify and freeze your transformations. Freezing your transformations is going to be important for exporting and making sure that there's no values in your channel box over here for your position and rotation values. You always want those to be zeroed out when you're working with the model. Once you zero out everything for this character and it's rotated up, your pivot might be in the center, or it might be down at 0, 0. If it's at 0, 0, that's perfect, but it might be in the center. If it's in the center, you can press D and W. Well, not in that order, obviously, right? So let me go back. W takes you to where you have your gizmo with its XYZ. E makes it where you're on your rotations. So let's go to W first. W will turn it to the position gizmo. And then what you want to do is hit D. You're going to see it changes a little bit over here if we zoom into it. What this allows you to do is you can now move this pivot around without moving around the mesh, which is what you're going to want to do. Again, we're going to want to snap to the grid. Snapping to the grid will allow us to ensure that we're going to have our pivot at 0, 0, 0. So select your mesh, press D, and then start moving your pivot around after you've turned on snap to grid. You can also zoom in and then snap it to grid. Once you're done, hit D again and you're good to go. Again, once you do this, it's just a safe bet to zero out everything again. So I totally recommend that. Hold down spacebar, go to modify, and then freeze transformations. After you do that, hold down spacebar again and go to edit, and let's delete by type. Let's delete our non-deformer history, and then let's delete our history. Once we do that, we'll be good to go. This will allow us to make sure our character is primed and ready to go. Save this file out. This file is saved out as your base mesh, or whatever you want to call it, _mesh. So now, let's open up a new scene. Once you have a new scene, what we're going to do here is reference in our character. Referencing in our character is going to allow us to have a clean character that's referenced into our scene, meaning that if you want to make any changes to the model, or you want to do anything differently to the model down the line, or add garments, hair, whatever it is, you can do that in the original file we just created, and it will get propagated down to all the files that are used as a reference. Now, it'll be important if you do this after we set up our rig and do our skinning pass, which is going to be much later. Then you're going to have to weight that to a joint or to a bone or what have you as well. But for this purpose, we just want to make sure we're using it how we do in the industry. I'm just telling you some of the practices that we go through to ensure that, You know, if other people need to touch the file, they can just focus on touching one file instead of going into your rig file or trying to find the file that you're using that's exported, when they can just update the model because it's all referenced in. So now we should be back on a clean scene of Maya. Once we're in here, we want to go down to our reference editor. Once we're in our reference editor, we want to select this. It's adding or creating a new reference. So now we want to go to where our mesh file was at that we were just on, and we will go reference. All right. See, so because we were in a new scene, you may get a pop-up that tells you that you're at 24 frames. So now we're going to want to go back to our windows. We're going to go back to setting and preferences, settings, 30. So set this back to 30. Save. You'll notice that the mesh may not have textures on it. You can select this icon right here, and that'll just turn on your textures, make them visible. So now we have our character referenced in, which is perfect. This is how we're going to want this to be set up. So now let's save this file. So we're going to save as, and save this as the _rig version of your file. All right. I like to leave this at 0. It does a 1.25 by default. Once this is at 0, you're good to go. Now we're going to go right into creating our rig. After you've installed the ARTv2, you should see this Art 2.0 up next to the help on the action bar, the top action bar in Maya. So you want to select that and go to Rig Creator. Once you're in Rig Creator, what you want to do is you do not want to move this right here. This is your root. You leave your root at 000. That's fine. Don't delete it. If you delete it, you got to start over. It leaves some kind of parts of the file. Once you delete it, it still leaves it in the file, and you won't be able to create another rig unless you start completely over. So be mindful of that. Once you have this selected, you want to just go down the line over here. There's torso, legs, joints, head, chain, and arm. We're going to do these in order. The other thing to keep in mind is the global mover controls. This is what you want to stay on pretty much the whole time, because it's going to allow you to move around each part of the body into the location you want it to be moved. Things you need to keep in mind is for the legs and arms, you don't want to really break your joints. So for an example, if you have like your leg, you know your knee bends on one axis. I mean, you can get some play, but that's you rotating the hip and doing other things. So for the knee joint, when you bend your leg, you want to make sure that you're not bending it out on the axes, like flaring the calf out or in. That's going to break your IK handles, and it's going to also break your rig when you go to build rig and skin it. So you want to make sure that you can position it just by selecting the hip and rotating it. And I'm just giving you that as a disclaimer. We're going to talk about that more as we do it, but I just wanted to let you know that you need to look out for that. So for torso, boop, press torso. It's going to show you this pop-up where you can add a module, and it's going to show you what it's going to be parented to, which is your root bone. So we're going to go create. Once it's created, it's already, or it should already be where you can move it around positionally. So you want to move it into position. You want to use R. The R key will allow you to scale. So you can scale right in here. Scale this down to where it fits. You may go, oh yeah, that looks like it fits, but it kind of doesn't, because everything's kind of off. You're going to want this to be conformed to her or to your character as best as possible. So what we're going to do is you can also move things around more once you have it set up like this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the G, which is the global mover controls, and we're going to turn on the mesh mover controls. So once we get it in the ideal position with the hips, which is what I'm focusing on right here, this area, then we're going to go in and we're going to move the mesh of these so that they're aligned better visually, so that we don't have this weird offset for the character. So you may want to move this around and scale it this is all going to matter when it comes down to placing the leg joints. So that looks pretty good. So we're going to leave that right there. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to turn this off, turn this on, and then select your next, select this, I think it's pink or more salmon color. You want to select this, and once you select it, you're going to move it on the y-axis forward so that it is actually, the control is actually around the part of the body you want it to control. Now this is just moving the mesh, so it's just giving us a better visual representation of where the control is going to be. Same thing with the next one. You're going to select that and press Y and go up to the next location. And then for the last one, I kind of like to match this up to where the shoulders are going to be. So right in this area, as if, you know, this character has like on like a uniform or something. I want the shoulders to match up. Usually that'll help the neck be aligned in the appropriate position and everything. So now that we have that, you can go over to the rig creator box and then left click on torso. Once you left click on torso, it'll open up more things you want to do, and you want to bake your offsets. But first, let's go back to G. And once we're in G, you know, deselect, select the main pelvis control, and then just go to bake offsets. Boop, baked offsets. Offsets are good. It looks like it still moves the controllers back, but we just want to have a good representation of where the mesh is for the character. So now we're going to start working on the legs. So it's cool. You can do one leg and then mirror over the other leg if your character is symmetrical. If it's not, then you just have to do each one by, you know, manually by hand. So let's click on leg. Once you click on leg, you're going to want to, you know, pick which leg you're going to start first, the left or right side. If it's the right side, you're going to want to select right side right here, and you're going to also put like an R in here for the suffix. We're going to be working on the left leg. And then you want to make sure it's to the pelvis is the parent, not the root. So select pelvis, add your suffix, make sure this is selected correctly, and then click create. Now that you have the leg created, you are going to want to only move this around and scale it. Now, as you can see, this character's feet, they're flared out a little bit to the right. The way you're going to want to do that, from, you know, what I've learned and from what I've done from doing things over and over and over, is you're going to want to just rotate from here on this ball joint to make sure that it fits correctly. So we're going to move this around and we're going to scale it up so that the knee fits over the knee on the character. But then when we get down to the foot, we're actually going to have to rotate on our Z to make sure it's flared out the same way. And this is what I was talking about with earlier with the knee. If you take this knee and you start flaring this out where you're bending it this way or this way flared out, it's going to be totally broken. What I've noticed it does is that it takes the toe bone, which will encompass, you know, those toes down here, and it'll offset them for some reason. I think that's either a bug in the system, because it does allow you to conform, you know, this rig to your model the best way possible. And if you do that, the repercussions is that it doesn't really work with how you're doing it or how it's being done. So what I've learned is that, you know, start with your leg. Let's scale this up. Once we scale this up, we just kind of want to get a general idea of where the knee is going to be. So you can see I'm just using this as an indicator right here to where the knee is on the character. And so this socket joint right here is where you're going to want to have the hip, meet up with the pelvis. You're going to want to have, just like in real life, your knee joint is not in the very back. It's right in the center of your knee. So you're going to want to keep this in the center of your knee. You may not want to rotate it. Usually the legs are straight down on the character. If your legs are not straight down and they're kind of at a 45, I recommend putting the legs straight down, which means you go back to your model file and you update that. Sometimes we do the arms at a T, but you get better deformation when they're at a 45 because of the range of motion. Now, if your character's doing a bunch of overhead stuff, you may want to do T because it'll give you a nice in-between of you having to do this. It'll make your back look weird because you're going to be already flexed. So when you put your arms down, it's going to be strange. But with this 45-degree angle on the arms, it helps because when you put your arms down, that's usually going to be the state you're in most. You start doing your acting and all the other motions for the animations you're going to be working on. You're still going to be closer to 45 than if you were at a T and you had to bring the arms down. You're just going to make your shoulders kind of weird. But it's all preference. So, there's no one wrong way. There's just a way that people use for better deformation. That's all. So I think I'm going to leave this like this for now. And what we're going to do is I want to make sure that this calf area fits better. So what I can do is you can go to rotation and you can rotate like this to get that to fit better a little bit on the leg. Make sure you don't have anything on snapping. So you can rotate like that. That looks pretty good. But see the foot, you see how the heel down here is kind of sticking out? I don't like that. I really don't like that because you're not going to get a good representation of where your foot is and where this is. Now see, this part looks pretty good, but the heel is flared out. It's just gonna, if you don't try to adjust it where it fits, it's something you're gonna have to deal with in your animations later. So if you think your feet are facing forward, they really won't be facing forward. They'll be facing with the heels kind of in a little bit. So let's see what we can do to change that. What I like to do is rotate out a little bit and then just move the position in more. I know it brings the leg where it's like this, but your rotations are still going to be the same. And your feet are more contained in the rig. This flare out, that's all aesthetic, I believe. I mean, a lot of people have their calves that go out a little bit more, but the rotations and the pivots still look pretty good. Because you're not going to want to rotate this. If you rotate this, it's going to look busted. You can press spacebar. That'll take you to another view. You see, because we rotated it up, our heel is out a little bit. So I think what we can do in this instance is we can select this and scale this down just a little bit. I think it might be a little bit too much on scaling it up, because what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to take this and we're going to want to rotate this on our x-axis. And I'm switching screens by pressing spacebar if you're new to Maya. So we can rotate this down just like that. And it looks like you see the toes are still sticking out. I want to scale that back up a little bit more just so it has everything in it. You can go to global scale over here too if you want to do it that way. So you can zoom in and see it better. And I might want to type it in. So 1.203. That looks pretty good. All right. So once you have that set up, that looks pretty good. Again, save your file. Control S, save your file. I just saved right now. What we're going to want to do now is we want to bake our offsets. So again, let's go back over to the rig creator box. Open up the leg left and let's bake our offsets. All right, once they're baked, the next thing we need to do is right click, and now we want to create mirror of this module. Suffix, you want to hit R or left if you started with the right leg before, and then click create. And give it a second. It's going to take its time. It's going to create a leg, and it's going to scale and move that leg to match what the other leg was. Perfect. Save your file. I'm going to say that a lot. Save your file. I'm not saving an iteration, but I should be saving an iteration. So let's save an iteration. Because if you mess up, you want to be able to go back to a good point. So I'm going to do save as, and in here I'm going to create another folder. Or I'm not going to create another folder because I don't want to deal with texture issues possibly. Let's just go underscore V for version, and then we'll do like an O, just in case you get up in the crazy 100 versions. Some people like to save a lot. So I'll just say this is version 2. And we'll just save it in the same location so all the files live in the same place. Once we do animations, we will actually create a folder and then put everything in there. But for this, since it's our rig, let's just do iterations in here. So now we have this saved. Save it again. All right, you can see the name is updated up here. The next thing we're going to want to do, we can actually go to our right leg and do bake offsets. All right, and this should be good to go. So I want to minimize these. Next thing we want to do is work on our arms. So when it comes to our arms, we are going to press the arm button down here. Same thing. Where do you want your arm to come from? We want our arm to come from spine 3. Spine 3 is going to be your chest spine up here at the top. And we're going to do our left side first. So we want to hit L as our suffix. And then we're going to hit create. So there's our arm. The arms come in at a T-pose. We will be rotating this down to 45 degrees. And we will be aligning the elbow, aligning the hand, and then aligning the fingers. This is going to take some time. You're going to want to pay attention to where the pivot points fall within the joints of the hand. So if you look at your hand right now, this is going to be where a joint is. This is going to be where a joint is. And something that people always overlook, your joint of your finger does not start right here where the webbing is. It's down here. It's in the hand. See that? So that's where your joint is. So when you start laying out the joint for your, I don't know these names by heart, but for your first joint in your fingers, you're going to want to be down here. That's where your joint is. And see this one? That's where this joint is. That's where this joint is for my middle finger. It's not right here. So you'll notice that when you're looking at certain people's animations and you're like, why do the hands look weird? What's going on there? They're not taking into account the anatomy of the actual hand. So you really want to have the joints be where they're going to be. Same thing with the thumb. This one's going to be a little tricky too, because while you have a joint in a joint, you still have a joint that's like down here that gives you this rotation. And then it's kind of free because it can move all over the place. Now, this hand in ARTv2 does not give you, I don't think it gives you the metacarpal. Oh, it does. It gives you metacarpals right here. That's cool. So what the metacarpal bone will do is it will help out with if you're doing this motion right here. Right? If you're trying to grab something and you want to do this, you can bring your pinky and your thumb together. That helps out with that. So you can add that if you need to add it. Because if you don't, you can't do that. And you're going to just have it where you can just do kind of like this motion. And there's certain poses where it won't be believable. But it's totally optional. Sometimes, or most times, it's not really added when you get into game animation, because you won't really see it. Where it is important is if you're doing cinematics or if you're doing like close-ups of the hands for any of your animation. It's going to be important to have that. You're going to get into situations where you're going to want to grab something and your hand's going to be like straight like this and you grab when you really want it to like conform around the object more. Like if you're grabbing a ball or something, instead of it being like you grabbing a ball like this, then you're going to be like, what the hell's going on? You're going to have to twist. You're going to be twisting your fingers, you know, to make them look like they're grabbing everything, right? Which is going to be crazy. So we can save our file. And then we can go over here and we can add metacarpals. I think it's to the ring and pinky joints is where you need it. These first two, they don't move. As you can see, they don't move and curve around like the ring and the pinky finger. These two kind of stay right where they are in the hand. They do not move at all. So you can see how much range of motion you get if you add those joints. Then if you don't add those joints, you'd be doing this when you bend your fingers, as opposed to like being able to get all the way around like that. So let's add that and let's see if this works, because in the things that I use it for working, we don't add that because you won't really see it for the gameplay version. So let's do include metacarpals, and let's go over here and look at this and see what did it do, or if it added anything. Oh, apply changes. Let's apply our changes. Boop. Looks like it's rebuilding the rig. There it goes. Ah, here it is right here. All right, awesome. It did add them. So it's going to be this joint right here. See how you can rotate that, and then you can rotate it forward. Yep, perfect. All right, cool. That's awesome. So now that we have that, let's get this arm in position. So to start moving the arm, we want to select this right here, which is considered to be like your clavicle. Even though it doesn't look like a clavicle, it's where the ball joint is for your arm, like right here in this area. And so we're going to want to get this to be socketed right into our arm, and then we're going to have to, rotate it down 45 degrees. Same thing with the knees. You're going to want to make sure that this is rotated appropriately. So while we're moving the clavicle into position, we want to select that upper arm, and we want to rotate that upper arm down so that that is in the right orientation of our model. And we're not going to want to break the elbow. If you break the elbow, it's going to be a mess. So we're going to move this over. I think we can scale this down from looking at it. So just make sure it fits your character as best as possible. We can always change it once we start scaling stuff again. Once we start rotating. I'm going to move this where I think it goes, and I'm going to save again. I want to make sure that this ball right here is on, let me go to front view, is on my character in the right location of where the arm is. So what you can do to see wireframe is go up here and press that. And I know this looks confusing, but what I want to see is where my pivot, because this is where the pivot is going to be. Where is my pivot going to be for my arm? So your clavicle, is going to probably be over here. If you follow the neck lines right here going down, that's going to be right here. And so this pivot for the arm, if you follow the contour, these lines right here going all the way up to the upper part of the shoulder, they come all the way up here. These blue lines come all the way right here. You want to make sure that this pivot is in the right spot. And so I think that looks pretty good. Might need to be down a little bit. Bring it forward. So I'm trying to make sure that this sphere right here is kind of in the center of where that shoulder is going to be. All right, once you have that, save your file, and then let's select the upper arm. For the upper arm, you want to go to rotate, and then you want to do this on the on the Y axis. Rotate it down. Yep. Once it's rotated down, that looks pretty good. It looks like I'm going to need to scale this a little bit more. If you look at where, let's turn on our topology, which is going to be right here next to the texture one. You can see where this bend is. That's where the elbow is. So it's going to be these three lines. So this line, and this line is where you're going to want to have this sphere right in the center over here. So we can scale this a little bit more. Uniform scale, I guess we can select the clavicle and scale from there. That'll be better because it'll scale everything And we're not trying to just move the mesh of the arm. We need everything to be scaled. So let's go back, save your file. You never know when, something bad could happen. We want to select our clavicle again. Now this looks crazy. You can select it here. I think you can select it in Outliner. Nope, let's not do that. You probably can, but I don't want to make things too confusing. If you're new, or if you're just following along for the first time, you can zoom in and select your clavicle by going here back to this wireframe, and you want to select this yellow piece right there. And so now you have the whole arm selected again, which is what you want. So let's turn back on smooth shade, and let's hit R, and let's scale this up. And then you want to keep an eye on where this pivot is at. I think it can go down a little bit more. This is uniform scale, so even if you try to scale in these other axes, it's not going to work for you. So just, you want to grab the yellow cube and scale that. Now this looks like it's in a better position. Even for the hands, it looks like it's in a better position. Because all we're going to want to do is rotate our forearm a little bit after we rotate this. So let's go back to our upper arm. Here's something good to keep in mind. Let's go to our tool settings, and let's change this to local instead of world. What this allows you to do is use the actual axes for anything you select. So in world mode, as you saw before, everything was still like kind of zeroed out to the world. But if you use local orientation, because we rotated it down almost 45 degrees, our axes are going to complement that, or are going to match that. So when we start rotating it again, we're not going to have some funky values. We're going to be seeing a true local axis. So now that we want to rotate it again, we can go on our Y and rotate a little bit more down. And we want to rotate it on our Z. That's why I want to go to local, because Z would have been flat, and it would have been a weird rotation that you're actually doing it on. So this one, we want to be able to take our arm and go this way with it. That back and forth. It's hard to show while I'm sitting down, but you want to do the back and forth as if you're bringing the arm forward in front of you. And this is only so we can get this pivot to match better to the arm. That may be a bit much. That looks pretty good. It needs to be centered, because your elbow is still like centered right here. The actual pivot where it is like right there. If you can put your hand on, you can feel that's where it's at. So yeah, so let's leave that where it is. We might be able to rotate down on our Y a little bit more, but you don't want to go too much. So I'll just leave it right here for now. So now let's save again. And let's select our forearm, and then go on our Z axis, and you want to rotate that forward. Now see, that's not fitting, which means we need to rotate back up on here so that the arm fits better. See, the contours are a lot better. Yeah, that's a lot better. That's nice. So that's good. You want to keep that like that. For the hand, we can rotate that down. And I believe we can scale the hand more if we want to without messing up everything else. So you can scale the hand up a little bit more, just so the fingers are long enough. We just want to make sure the palm is in the right spot too. Save your file before you start going in here tinkering around with stuff. Save your file. So let's look at where the placement is. That looks pretty good. I'm just trying to size up where the hand is right now. Let's rotate it a little bit back on the Y axis. And so now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that joint that I was telling you about that's right here on the hand, which is down off in the hand, you know, as opposed to people putting it right here. You see how much you lose? You lose so much when people put the joint right here because they think this is where the hand joint goes because of the webbing of the hands. It actually goes down off into the palm, the back hand of the palm a little bit more. So that would be this area. So that's pretty good. That looks pretty good of where it would be for the rotation back off in here. I feel like I want to scale it a little bit more, just a little tiny bit. So just, you know, I'm trying to match this line, this contour line we got right here. That's underneath on the hand mesh. See this line, this segment right here, that segment continues all the way on. So I'm just trying to make sure that this line for the hand kind of goes over that a little bit. And I think that I like this. I like how it's conforming to the back of the palm. It's a little bit more even. It's encompassing the hand fully more as well. Let's see if we can rotate it on the Z-axis a little bit more. So to make sure the joints are centered. Nah, see that joint is. You can also move those up when we get to the fingers, but yeah, let's leave it like that. That looks pretty good. All right, I like that. Let's do save. Now we're going to go and look at laying out the fingers for this character. What you want to start with is you want to start with, I think they actually have their names on here. Let me see. Let's start with our index finger. It is our, oh man, I'm going to butcher this, proximal mover, right? So the very first joint in the index finger, we want to get that to be in the right position. Now, when I say right position, let me explain that a little bit more. As you can see, the knuckles, like I said before, you have one knuckle here, and a knuckle here for, you know, bending the tip of your finger. Here's the tip of your finger, here's your middle knuckle, and then here's the knuckle that's deeper into the hand than where most people put it. So what we're going to do is we want to go to press W, and then pressing W will take you back to your XYZ position. It looks like it's in a good position already. I'm just going to move it over a little bit on the Z, and then we're going to go to our rotation and rotate this out on our Y and rotate it down. We want to make sure these joints are in the right spot. I think we can get away with rotating or moving this on our Y a little bit just to move it down. But we're going to have to scale this too. So when looking at the fingers where your joints are, it looks like this joint needs to be all the way right here on this finger. Yeah, you can even see the lines. Oh, this is really detailed. So you see these lines on your hands right here. Use those as guides. You know, all models will not have that, sadly. But if you look at the topology and how it's laid out, you can get a really good idea of where you can see a bend will be and where blending will need to happen. So this will be where our joint, this black sphere right here, needs to be in this area. And then your blending is going to be from this row of segments and this row of segments to the hand to make sure when you bend your finger, it actually bends correctly. And then that means this joint is going to want to be down here so you can get the tip of the finger. So let's just go to our scale key, which is going to be R, and let's move this down a little bit. Move down meaning scale up. All right. It looks like we need to go a little bit more. even more still. You can scale each joint of the finger, but you want to make sure this is in the right spot. If it's not in the right spot, your hands are going to look busted when you start making a fist. Let's see, this looks like it's in the right spot right here. So let's grab this one and rotate it down. But see, that's way too much. So before we start scaling the rest of these joints in the finger, let's get this one. You want to get your top joint in the right spot first, so you don't have to keep going back and forth and tinkering around. So that doesn't really help too much, that wireframe. It's going to look like a mess to some people. But we want to make sure we're on that joint, or that rotation. Which I think we're close. We can probably scale it a little bit more, but I think that's our row of segments we want to be on right there. I might be down one more. Let me move this out the way so I can see. And how I'm gonna do that is I'm just gonna rotate this sucker back up so I can get a look at the finger again. And you can always undo. So let me go on the z-axis. Yeah, no, see, that's not right. See, so we're still up one. We need to go down to where it's right here on this one for our pivot. So you can just scale that up to go down one more. Just a little bit more. I know that looks huge, but you're gonna want their pivots to be in the right spot. And then we'll have to scale down the other parts of the finger, which is fine. All right. So let's move this again. Let's rotate this away to see. That looks pretty good. It looks like it can still be down a little bit more. And this is where it's not glamorous. You know, you're being very nitpicky about things, but this is going to make your work look better in the long run. And you got to, you know, this is why rigging is its own thing. And we're using a rigger, like a tool to do this. A person that has to do this, you know, all from scratch. It's insane. It's insane. Everything needs to be aligned like crazy, like to a T, because it'll just everything will just get messed up, and then they're gonna have to deal with that. So, but rigging is its own discipline. It's come so far as well. And so what I'm doing, I'm still scaling, and I'm just rotating to track it and see how close I am to the joint. A little bit more. I think that might be good. Yeah, as you can see, this is our knuckle right here. I'm gonna do a little bit more, just because I want to make sure like that looks a lot better. Let me go back to here, see if I can see my pivot is at. So you can see, hopefully you can see the line of segments. It looks like it's this one right here. If we look at the finger, yeah, it's this row of segments right here. This ring. That's where we want our pivot to be. And it looks like we're almost there. It just needs to be a little bit more, because here's our pivot right here. This center point. And you're going to have to try to visualize like between this cluster and this cluster where the center is. And so we're not quite there. We're almost there. I mean, if you're looking at it from this perspective, where if you look at this and draw a straight line down as opposed to this angled line for the contour, then we're really close. But you know, I'm gonna do it just a little bit more. All right, so let's just select this again, and we're just gonna scale it up a little bit more. All right. Okay, and once that's scaled up, let's go down to the next digit. And so we really have this one overscaled. So let's just bring this one back a little bit. And we want this one, oh, it's gonna have to go back a lot. And we might have to rotate it more. And scale it. That looks like it could be good. No, that needs to be scaled down a little bit more. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty centered. All right, now you can work on the tip of the finger. And you just want this to kind of be conformed to where the finger is. So I'm just going to rotate this up a little bit. And that's pretty much it. I don't need to do anything else with that. It's fairly centered with how it is. We could go in here and rotate this out on our y-axis a little bit to get this to be aligned a little bit better. It looks like it's pretty good. So let's save our file before we start doing that. And let's save another version. I'm going to save as number 3. Sometimes you can do this as an auto save where you can do auto version saves on every time you press it. I don't really like doing that. That's when you'll get into like, I'm on save 57 and you really haven't done much to you know, justify having that many saves. You're just taking up more space on your computer. So I like to save incrementally on the file I'm using, but I like to save up on a version when I'm like, okay, yeah, I made a pretty good change I want to save. Right now we're still kind of finding out what it is we want to do with things, so I just kind of save that in the same file. So this is, I think this is snapping. There's a snap on my rotation, I think. But I can always go in and do it manually. So that looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. I like that. This looks like it's moved down a little too much for the pivot. Yeah, and let's rotate this one back down. Yeah, I like that. All right. Now for this mesh, you can scale that mesh down. I'm just gonna leave it like that. That's fine. I'm gonna leave it like that. Just because. So we do save. And now that's one finger down. Now you gotta do the 4 other fingers. And this takes time, man. Rigging takes time. So let's jump over to our next finger. Let's rotate this down. We already know we need to move it to here. Here's our pivot for our finger. So we need to scale this. pretty much can scale that down. This arrow represents where that pivot's going to be. So there's that. Move down to the middle joint. Let's rotate. All right, and then we're gonna want to scale this down. But as you become more competent with this, it's gonna get faster. You're gonna get really fast with it, and then you'll know exactly what you need to do. Let's scale that again. All right, that looks good. This one looks like it needs to be rotated on the Y axis. Oof, too much. Just a little bit. Yeah, that's better. All right, so let's make sure that this, let's rotate this down. We gotta rotate this on our Z axis more. Nice. All right. Well, that looks good. Let me move it back a little bit. Now let's go back to our middle finger, the middle joint on the middle finger, and rotate that down. It needs to be up a little bit more still, so we can scale that more. There's our joint right there, our pivot. Yeah, see, this is turned a little bit. Now you can break this finger and turn that in to match it more. Again, it's all in how you want to do it, but just know if you turn this joint in like that, because your hand might be like that. I think I just popped my finger a little bit. If you turn, oh yeah, I am popping it. I feel it. If you turn your joint in, when you bend it, your finger is gonna be like this instead of it being, like kind of bent normal. It's gonna have a weird bend to it, and it's gonna make it harder when you have to make a fist, because now you're gonna have to break that joint to make a fist, which could be okay, but it's something more that you're gonna have to be concerned about. So I wouldn't recommend breaking your finger joints like crazy. I'm probably gonna feel that in the morning. That's gonna suck. I'm like, why is my hand all achy? So yeah, so let's select this again. I think I want to rotate it a little bit more, and hopefully you're following along with this. And the time it's taking me to do this, it may take you a little bit longer once you're getting into it, but I'm doing this so you can see, the adjustments and how meticulous you really need to be in order to get the fidelity for later when you start animating. So I'm going to rotate this on Y a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Just make sure those pivots are in the right spot is all I'm caring about right now. All right, this looks like it's coming out the right spot. Looking at this, it looks like it's still too low. So I'm going to actually go back here and scale that down a little bit more. Excuse me. And then I'm going to go back to the tip of this joint, and I'm going to scale this up so that it fits to the finger a little bit better. All right. Yeah, I like that better. All right, same thing with this one. Let's go back to our middle finger. This looks like it's in a good spot. Scale it a little bit more to bring that pivot point up a little bit. That looks pretty good. Rotate this out a little bit. Yeah, see, that's not bad. Oh, let me see. I think this one can go back up a little bit more. Look at the Z. There's the Z pivot on it. So let's scale this down a little bit. There you go. That looks good. That looks better. All right. back to that middle joint. And then rotate this out a little bit. And then we can scale this one up a little bit too so it fits better on the tip of the finger. But then we're going to want to rotate this down, which makes me feel like I want to rotate this top joint more. Yeah, let's do that. Do that. Do that. Those pivots look pretty good. I'm just going back to this one. I just want to make sure that this is good. I'm going to scale this one back down a little bit more because it doesn't need to stick out that far from the finger. All right, save your file. It's looking good. Let's go to our ring finger. Now for the ring finger, I don't want to move. I don't want to move this down a little bit because I like where the metacarpal's falling, and I want to keep that kind of zeroed out where it's at. So same thing on this one. Let's scale this one up a little bit more. Let's go into, oh, do not set keys. Undo that. S sets a key. So if you hit that, there's two ways you can get rid of that. You can go down to your timeline and right click and, delete. Boop. It'll delete any keys on that frame, or you can just undo. So what I did was I did Control Z to undo to get rid of those keys. Sometimes when you're moving your fingers fast along the keyboard, you'll end up hitting that key and setting the key, stroking the key on an S when you're going from like your W's to your D's and stuff like that. So let's rotate. We're going to rotate this down. See where this pivot is at. I'm zooming in by holding down Alt on the keyboard and right click hold, and then just move the mouse left and right. You can zoom in. To rotate around, it's Alt and left click. So I think we need to scale this a little bit more. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see what this looks like up here. That looks fine. Let's rotate our next joint. So again, you can use those green arrows to help you out with where the pivots are. I'm going to scale this down. That looks good. See, that pivot looks like it's not in the right spot, looking at it like that now. Scale that like that, and then scale this one back down. There we go. That needs to be rotated more though. So we'll rotate this. I feel like saving. Save your file. And I think after I get the pinky where I want it, I'm going to version up. Don't want to take no chances. All right, so that looks good. Now let's work on this rotation. I think I want to bring this one back a little bit more. Again, you want this to conform to your fingers as best as possible. It's going to make your life a whole hell of a lot easier once you start animating your character. If they're not in the right spot, you're gonna hate it because you're gonna have to do it over. But that's fine. I would hope that you're taking this and you do it a few times before you move on to the next video. because it's important to learn how to do this. And a lot of this is just coming from repetition, to be honest. Repetition and experience, so that you'll from using other people's rigs, you'll be like, oh, I like it when it's like this. I like it when the rig is like this, or the joints are laid out like this. And that's what we're working with right now. So from the looks of this, it looks like I can rotate this back. Not D. E. I can rotate this back on the y-axis a little bit. There we go. That was nice. That was like perfect. Nice. All right, let's move on to the pinky. I'm actually going to save it right now. Save often, save often, save often. I'm going to get some water. I'm a little thirsty. All right. All right, so let's get the pinky in the right spot. Same thing with this one. Let's rotate it down to start. Scale this up. And now this looks like we might have to move it, but let's just see what happens. Because this looks like it's over really far. You can already tell. Yeah, I think I want to bring this one out a little bit on the Y and then rotate it down. I can't really see that pivot well. Let's try something else. Let's rotate this. Oh yeah, it needs to be brought down. Let's scale this a little bit more. Always double check. It doesn't hurt to double check. You don't want to be double checking after you already started animating. And even after we get to this point, you're like, oh, I don't like this. Go back to your save file, do that over, and then finalize your setup. But we're just gonna get this through on our first time for now, and then move on to the next part. All right, let me rotate this right. So the texture doesn't fall in the right line. So this is fine though. I think this is a good position for it. All right, let's move this next part down. Let's rotate it. And then we're definitely gonna have to scale this. I think that's where the pivot is. Almost there. Oh, this pinky is strange. So if that's the knuckle for that, I think this is scaled up a little bit too much. Let's go back to this vertice right there, at least. So I'm gonna scale this down a little bit. There we go. So this looks off. I wish that was on a little bit better. It looks like the texture is just off, which means, you know, this row of segments would be for here, 1, 1. This texture should be right here. That means our pivot should be down more, but our knuckle looks correct on the top part. So let's rotate this out the way and see what it looks like. Yeah. So we're good. We're good right there. Let's leave that right there. This other pivot looks like it could be fine. I think we need to just, scale up the pinky a little bit, the tip of the pinky. And then maybe recenter. Yeah, we might need to recenter it. We might need to rotate a little bit. I think that's what we're gonna do. Well, we're gonna do it at the top, but let's scale this a little bit right here first, so that it matches better. All right, so let's rotate the top part. We're gonna rotate it on the x-axis, which is fine, and then out on the y, so we can really encompass the finger a little bit. Let's do x a little bit more. That's looking better. And then hit y again. I think it needs to be more on X and then Y. That looks pretty good. Do X a little bit more. As you can see, what I'm trying to match up is the flatness of this top part of the nail, how flat that is in relation to where this part is right here. It looks like it's twisted a little bit more over like that. So I want to make sure they kind of look aligned better, and then we're going Y. That looks better. That looks more centered. That looks more centered. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. Let me rotate it down a little bit more. And then we're gonna move on to the thumb. So it's not taking that long. If we had to do this from scratch, it would take a lot longer though. And then even still, you know, you'd have to check everything to make sure it'll work when you do your export. So that looks good. Let's save. Oh man. All right. Now let's work on our thumb. This is important. So we want to make sure that that's what's talking about with this joint right here. You want to make sure that this really encompasses the part of the hand that you want. When you start skinning this, it's going to be important to make sure that you can get like a nice transition right here. It looks like it goes all the way down to here. I mean, these are all metacarpals when it comes to the palm. But it looks like you have a nice joint that you can play with that's like right here that has like a crazy 360 almost. Or not 360, but it has a higher range of motion than your fingers do. I mean, you can twist your fingers manually, but you can't twist them, you know, on your own unless you're grabbing something. So you want to make sure that that works for you really well. So let's get this thumb going. After that, we just got to do the head, but I wanted to do a simple face setup for this character too. So we'll do that as well. We'll plot out some joints for it and save to make sure that it's working the way we want. But we also can just do a normal setup on here with just the head, and then always come back to adding the face. But we'll see. Let's do the thumb first. All right. Same thing with the thumb. You're gonna want to have the thumb where it matches where your joints are. So it looks like this first pivot needs to end here. I'm looking at my thumb right quick. This joint needs to go here. So you go back to 1, 2. Yeah, you're gonna want it to be back here. This just pivot. So let's rotate this on our Y axis. And then our Z axis. That's a pretty good spot already for it. That looks pretty good already. This thumb is matching up nice. And I do the same thing for this one. That pivot looks nice already too. And then this one. That's good. I like that. Let's do that like that. That looks pretty good. Maybe we can move up on our Z a little bit. And then rotate this back down. Looks pretty good. Nice. That was a lot quicker. Save. All right. Let's save again. And then let's save an iteration up. That was good. get this arm saved. So that's 4. You also can do better naming. I'm doing number progression, but you can do better naming. You can do, you know, for example, female base mesh underscore rig underscore version 2 underscore arm leg, you know, so you have an idea of what you worked on in that file. It'll make it a lot easier, you know, if you're, instead of doing this number hunt, if you need to go back to something. So this is going to be number 4 for me. So I'll save as. And so I save that because I'm about to do the big offsets for the arm. Perfect. All right, it did not break anything. So now what we want to do is we want to go back over here and right click and do create mirror of this module. And we want this to be the right arm. So we're going to do our suffix and hit R and create. So it's going to make everything the same, and then it should put it in position. Perfect. Great. All right. Let's save again. So let's save this as 5. Save scene as 5. So then we, if something happened, we would have went back to 4. But 5 is going to be one we're going to start saving over. We're going to add the head to this. So all those pivots are pretty good. So let's go back and we're going to add our head. Boop. And we want the head to be also attached to spine 3. So you want to find spine 3 on here. Spine 3, boop, right there, and then click create. Excuse me. All right. Now again, you want to just move this into position. Let's go back to our show hide tool settings button, and let's turn this back to world. So now we're not moving it on the local axes, because if you saw, the local axes would have made us go in this weird diagonal going this way, which would be a nightmare to try to place that appropriately. So we turned it back to world. World is going to give us our Z up, and everything else is going to be much like this gizmo down here, which shows you how the world view is, the world axes view. So let's take this back up to getting the head on the neck, on the shoulders and stuff. So now we're going to move this up. You pretty much want the face and the neck to fit on the character, so like where the chins are and everything. You don't need to have your neck sunken down in here. I think by default, it gives you 2 joints. Number of neck bones, 1. Yeah, let's add, usually you have 2, so you can do stuff like, you know, this, and then you can even go all the way to your shoulder more. So that's like, you can do that with 2 joints. If it's just 1 joint, you're gonna have like just this one, you're gonna have this 1 joint right here, and you're gonna be able to rotate your head still. So you'll be able to do this, all right, limited motion, and then your neck is gonna go like all the way over. There's no in between. So we can add another joint on there, which is what I think we will do. So let's just do 2 neck joints, apply changes. All right, so now you have 2 neck joints, 1, 2. Let's go back and move this down. Try to match the head on here. Or where the pivot will be. I think you can scale this down. That looks pretty good. It just needs to fit on the head correctly, or fit around the face correctly. You can probably do it like that. Looks pretty good. Let's see if we rotate this, what that would look like. That's not a bad pivot. That's right underneath the jawline. All right, cool. So what I was, save, do bake offsets. on the right arm too. Let's do bake offsets on the right arm. Let's do bake offsets on the head. All right, let's save. So that's pretty much it right there. If we wanted to stop and like finalize our character, I wanted to set up a facial structure on her too. I kind of feel like we can probably come back to that and do it. I feel like we can come back to that and do it. I think there's going to be, how many joints can we use? I think for the face, normally there's like 19 to a little over 20 something in the face to get like just the bare minimum of like being able to open the jaw. And then usually like 5 or 6. So is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 joints, 7, 8. Sometimes people do 7, 8 so you can get like just the center part too. So you can do 8, and then you get cheeks, eyes, eyebrows. So you can do all that. So I think what we'll do is, let's save another version. Let's use some of these joints and start placing in some joints for the face. Let's just do that now. We'll see how many we can get in there. I think 8 will be good for the mouth area, and then 9, 10 for one for each cheek. Let me see. So it'll be pretty much. Yeah, we'll have a joint here. We'll have some joints in the eyes, so we can rotate the eyes. And, you know, we can go full ham on it. We can put some joints in the hair, so we can get some wiggling going on in there too. We could also, I don't know if you want to do it after the fact though, because if you do it after the fact, you don't get control. It won't be a part of the hierarchy when you use the tools. So yeah, so let's start setting up some joints and let's see where this goes. So let's save this as 5. Let's save another version. We're gonna save as, this is gonna be our version number 6. So let's do save as, and we'll do this as number 6. All right, and what you want to do here is you want to use the joints. There's these joint helpers that you can use. I haven't used chain. I think there was something else that's gonna be new with that button. I don't think it does much right now. So let's do joint. We want this joint to be parented to the head, because it's gonna, when it moves, like, you know, your face moves with your head. So that's why we're gonna do that. So select head, joint. And so we actually can name this. So let's just leave it as joint, but let's add jaw. Was it all lowercase before? I think it was. So just do lowercase jaw. Joint jaw. And that's going to the head. Create. And that's this right here. So what you can do with this is just a little bit different. Well, actually a lot different than the other parts of the body rig, is if we go over here back to the channel box area and click on jaw joint, you can set what's going to be keyable and what's not going to be keyable. So it locks it for you. The other thing you can do is you can select the control type. So you can set how you want the control to be visually. And in the proxy shape, right now it's a cube, and the controller is a circle. So let's do, it's for the jaw. Let's kind of leave that what it is. Let's make this, is that triangle? Kind of like that. Instead of a cube, I think we can keep it as a cube. All right, so let's move this into place. It is already centered, I believe. Yes, so let's go to our side view and place this. Save your file. And let's go to wireframe. Let's scale this down. Let's do this. Let's rotate. Move this into location. Where we want our jaw. And your jaw rotates here. There's like a hinge, like kind of right at the bottom of the ear, but in front a little bit. Right there. That's where your jaw will rotate. So it's like right down here, right below the ear. It's kind of circular, little padding. Everybody's face is different, right? So again, we want to make this look right for this character's face. What we're going to do to make this a little bit easier for ourselves, let's make a layer and put the rig on a layer for now. So select, you should be able to select the pieces. We already saved this. So let's select the pieces and then add selected objects, visibility. There you go. All right, so let's select this. Add selected objects. I'm just selecting the clavicle now and the neck. And then we're going to add, yeah, we'll add these. All right, so now what we're looking at is our mover right here. All right, so let's turn on our stuff right here again. I want to rotate that triangle around. Let's go to set up our local again like we did before. It's going to be important. You want to make sure that these pivots are in the right spot because where they start and where they end is going to be important for when you want to start setting up your phonemes that we're going to do much later. You don't want it to go straight out and then rotate. I kind of like it to go along the contour of the chin. So if we have the triangle back part sticking out, we want it to rotate like this and have it come out to a point. So let's see what we can do with that and see what that does to our axes as well. Yeah, see, you're gonna want Z to be what you're rotating that on and not X. Normally it's Z. So we're gonna want to change this. Yeah. We're gonna want to change this. So let's rotate this. What is that? Y is 90 degrees. man, that is not 90 degrees. And then this one should be 0. All right, that's good. And then we want Z to be 180. All right. So now on our Z-axis, we can rotate our jaw. We can scale this up a little bit more so we can see it coming through her mouth. And I want to go back to here. So we're going to go back to our side view. In our side view, you can really start to see, like you see where the pivot, the yellow box is where the pivot is. So if you use that as your guide, you should be able to get that right underneath the ear, like for your, where yours is at. You can kind of see here that the character's jawline, it kind of goes back along right here. So this is kind of close. I just want to move it up a little bit more and rotate it so that the y-axis is going down that same line, meaning that this point is going to be pointing right down. And then you'll have a nice point here that you can select a control to like start rotating. So let's do that. Let's select this and we're going to rotate this down. That's a good axis. And then we're going to want to move it up a little bit and over. That looks nice. I kind of like how that looks like that. I like how that looks. So then it's going to rotate down. Let's change the cube to a circle. A sphere. There we go. Let's go back here. So yeah, so when you put everything onto that jaw, it's going to rotate just like that on Z-axis. That's good. Okay. Let's save. It's important. Let's make another version. So we're going to call this one version 7. So save scene as, and then we'll do 7. Save as. All right. So now the next things we can do to plot out the face, we can do, we're going to have to do lids for the eyes. We're going to have to do eye controllers. We're going to have to do eyebrow controllers, nose controller, cheek controller, and the mouth controllers. Yeah. So let's make some more joints. All right, we saved. So we're going to do joint. And we want this again to be to the head. And let's start working on let's do the eyes. Get that out the way. So we can also do duplication of the eye to get the eyelid, the upper and lower eyelid. Yeah, let's do that. So this will be eyeball, E-Y-E-B-A-L-L, eyeball underscore left. Joint eyeball underscore left. Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's turn this to a sphere. Go back here, control shape. Sphere. And then this one's going to be a sphere. All right, so let's move this where it needs to go. And you should be able to match. You should be able to match the size of the eyeball in the socket to the actual sphere circumference of your controller. So let's scale this down. Let's go back here. Wireframe. Yeah, it's gonna be tiny. Scale it down. And you can match up, you know, how these lines are fitting on the center of this. That'll be a good indicator of if it's actually a sphere. That's pretty good. Oh, another thing to keep in mind is that joints do not work well if you try to do a mirror for them for some reason. So you're gonna want to create both eyes separately, you know, both eyebrow controls separately. It's come into some issues when you try to mirror those over for some reason. I don't know why. It's probably just a bug. But we're gonna create one and then create the other. That looks pretty good. It's pretty spot on. Go to your front view. That's what you want to do. Turn on wireframe, and then just make sure that these, if there is a actual segment in there, just make sure that the segments match. You should be good to go. I don't see one up top. Oh yes, see. It needs to be down a little bit. Oh, it needs to be in the center of that. Is there one that goes off? Oh, there is. What am I doing? All right. I was just doing undo. This mic is, let me move this back a little bit. I think I can, move this a little bit more so that it fits better. Yeah, you can see how it's starting to shift over. So yeah, I can, see, it's not completely on one line or the other. That looks pretty good though. It's pretty straightforward. Maybe I can move it back a little bit more. No. All right. What you can do is you actually copy your values though. Copying your values over will ensure that both eyes are the exact same size. And you can also do negative versions to, not negative versions, but negative values in order to get it to be in the right position that's symmetrically to the other eye. You just need to create the joint on its own instead of mirroring it. So that's what we'll do. So let's save. Let's create another joint. And again, this one's going to be to the head. And this is going to be eyeball The other one's eyeball L. And create. All right, so let's go back to the eyeball R, and what we're going to do is we are going to change these to be a sphere and a sphere. Oh, we also want to make sure that our rotations are the way we want. So this looks like Z should be up and down. So does it show where the pivots are? It does, okay. So we're going to want to rotate this on our y-axis 90 degrees. All right, so now our Z is up. Let's grab that other one. We're going to want to bring this up to here. And so now we can use the same values on this. Let's move it over first. Let's make this a negative. Oh, see, it's not. Oh, yeah, that looks like it might be right. All right, so let's just put the other values in right quick. All right, let's see what our scale was. 248. All right, so we're just matching our values right now for our XYZ position and rotation and our global scale to make sure that they are consistent with one another, and we don't have any weird, like, one eyeball's rotating crazy and the other one's not. Other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our rotations, like this was 90, we want to copy that one over too. That was on our y-axis. So let's copy that over. All right, so now when we grab both of these, they should rotate the exact same way. Save your file before we start messing around with stuff. Turn on that again. Let's go to rotation. You see they both roll up, they both roll down, they both roll over, they both roll over. Perfect. All right, so there's our eyes. So now we have our eyes. We want to duplicate exactly where those are, and probably we can change so for the eyelids, what you want to do is you want to duplicate where the locations are for that size and everything. It's literally making a duplication right on top of that eye. But what we're going to do is we're going to offset it on the z-axis to be rotated up a little bit or down a little bit to represent the eyelids, the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm just making sure, I'm thinking right now just to make sure how I want to set it up so that it works the best. I mean, if you look at how many edge loops are in here for the eye, that's what these are right here considered. Say there's only really 3 or 2 that you're going to want to mess with, which is, this is probably as far down as you want to go with blending up. you know, we're not reptiles, so our bottom lid doesn't go up as much. Like with reptiles, it's kind of half and half. Some creatures, the eyelid, bottom eyelid is what closes. More of the, I think the aquatic characters, they have like some other membrane. It's not actually them blinking with some membrane that's going over their eye. So we want to make sure that we have our rotations correct, and how we do our offset. Let's look at the top eyelid a little bit. So it looks like we're only going to be able to get, there's this row and maybe the row above it, which is this row right here. And this is the one thing, I mean, so we got to see how this looks, because usually when the eyes are a little darkened around the eye socket, two things can happen. You can blend it as best as you can, but because there's texturing on those, which is like not really uniform, it looks gonna look like you have like a black eye when you blink, because the lid is gonna be darker right here, and it may not look correct. The only thing you can do as a rigger is work around that limitation and make it where it's not as obvious that there's like these stretchy black marks, because it's just stretching the mesh and stretching the UVs and stretching the texture pretty much. So yeah, so let's create that. So we're gonna make some more joints. We're gonna do them one at a time so we don't get confused and nothing's crazy. We're gonna start with making another joint that's gonna go to the head. Save your file. Let's do another version just for shits and giggles. So, we are saving ourselves, covering our butts. So save as, let's do, this is gonna be version 8. All right, so what we're gonna do with this is click joint again. This is going to be to the head as well. And we're gonna call this eyelid L. L upper. Yeah. That'll group them together. So naming is important, because once you get your naming convention down, things will be grouped together. Like how you can see in this box, neck 1 and neck 2 are together. So eyelid L upper and eyelid L lower will be next to each other. And same thing for the right versions. The R will be what separates it out, where they're both next to each other, as opposed to it being stacked all weird. All right, let's click create. Let's bring this up to here. All right, so to make sure we don't get lost, I do want to keep these separate looking. So like for the proxy shape, let's do the control type. We want that to be, what does the arrow look like? Oops, wrong one. See, there you go. We want that to be sphere, and we want to close that because that's not the one we're on. We're on this one. And we want this to be, what does the arrow look like? No, we do not want that. Nope. I think we're going to use triangle again. I think we're going to use triangle again. And we don't want this to be a sphere. I think cube is the, is there a cone? Oh man, that's not going to, let's leave it a cube. All right, so let's get everything to be the same as this one. So we're just going to copy everything over. Let's go back to our wireframe so we can see everything. And then our mesh. to that or not. What you can do is you can create a channel down here and put your mesh on it. So you should be able to. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. See, that's gonna live in your referenced file that you reference your model from. So yeah. So unless you go back and change that, then you can't do it in here. Which is not a problem. Let's just, you know, you can just move around till you get to a nice negative space, and then you can get what you need. So we're just still copying over values right now. So that's the same pivot. We just need to scale this down. And this was a 0.248. All right, that's better. And then the rotation. Make sure the rotation matches. Perfect. All right. All right. So I think we're going to want to rotate this to be a little bit different. We're going to want one of these points to be forward. Or let's look at our control type. Let's do, I think I want to do, I think I want to stick with triangle. And I want to rotate it a little bit differently. Is what I want to do. So we're going to rotate it on our Z. Yeah, we're going to rotate it on our Z. Ooh, I don't know if I want to do that. Let's do this. Oh, that's still going to be huge though. Let's see. Excuse me. It's late. It is late. Be a little creative. I'm gonna scale it down a little bit more. Its pivot should still stay the same, but I want to have this controller be like that. You can hit F to focus on the selected object. So that's a good thing to have. So we're gonna leave that like that. Yeah, I like that like that. All right, so if we select both of these, save your file before you start breaking stuff. All right, so if we select both of these and we rotate, yeah, see, they'll rotate. That's good. All right, so now we gotta do that again, and we're gonna do the bottom lid, and then we're gonna do it again and again to get the other eyes, the other eye, and then we're gonna do some eyebrow placement, and then after that we'll start working on the mouth and the tongue and the teeth. Sometimes people have joints on the teeth, sometimes people don't. Usually it's so you can get the teeth to move around a little bit more. I really don't like having the teeth moving around more, but sometimes you need to get them out of the way. So we may have a joint for the upper and lower teeth, just so we can kind of move them and pull them back when we have to do our oohs and ahs and stuff like that. It might be a little easier. We just don't want them to be looking like they're swimming around in the mouth. That's why I kind of stay away from doing that. So we'll see. Maybe we won't add them, but we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. All right, so let us add another joint, and it's going to be to the head. Save your file again. Joint, and look for the head bone. And this is going to be eyelid L underscore. We did upper, so we're going to do lower, LOWER, and then create. All right, bring it up here. And we're actually going to match it to this one. So let's get that scale first. All right, and let's turn this back to triangle. Oh, wrong one. See, it matters, man, it matters. What were we looking at? Eyelid upper. Do we leave that as a cube? Yeah, it was a cube and a triangle. Okay. So close this one. That's why it's good to save. Close that one. We didn't make any changes that was going to break anything. So triangle. All right. And now we just need to get these other values on here. I'm doing a copy paste, so you can actually copy paste text in Maya pretty well. So select the field on the channel box, Control C, and then select your other field on the new location, and then Control V, and then hit enter. Let's go back to wireframe so we don't lose our geometry and stuff. Looking at these triangles is making me have a taste for Doritos. But my stomach is already feeling queasy just thinking about eating those chips. I haven't had them in years. Well, not years. I won't say that. That's a lie. I haven't had them in months, actually. So, nacho cheese flavor. All right, so we're going to select this, and we're going to copy it and then put it onto the new one. Same thing with this one. Copy. Paste. All right, so this is where it's going to get tricky because we need to make sure it's -90, -90. All right, so that matches completely. So because we went up with it, we want to rotate it back. We want to rotate it back down. So if we were to go on our Z axis and go back like this, oh, there's our other one. There's our bottom eyelid. All right. So let's go back to here. Let's lower this one again. All right, I like that. And then to have the eyelids match, we'll just use these same rotations on our Y, on our Z and Y axes, and then we should be good to go. So now, if I take this and this, now the question is, do you want that to be different? Like if you grab them and you can blink, and the answer is hell yes, you do want it to be like that. So that's how we're gonna want that, because you want to be able to select them, and you can like do this to them, like, and that's gonna help out when you guys start doing squints and stuff. I mean, I know you need to look at each eye, but you just don't want it to be that separated, because it's gonna be weird. It's gonna feel weird when you start doing it. Yeah. So we need to change our orientation completely for our X and Z rotations. So save your file. We only want to select the bottom one. And to interesting, interesting. Interesting how that rotated. That's very interesting how that rotated. We might want to change this back to world. And then just rotate it like this. 180. Which gives you funky numbers, man. I don't like that. There has to be a better way we can do this. Let's see. Let's go back to local. Object mode. Let's zero back out. Let's keep this what it was. So it's just 90. So let's zero this back out to 0, 0, and then this was 90. All right, so that's what that is right now. So now we know on our Y, we want to just continue that rotation over. This will be a cleaner way of doing it. So if we want to rotate like that, then we do negative 90. So now you can select this and do negative 90. All right, and then you want it to be like that. That's pretty good. All right, cool. So now when you rotate these, they should be like a scissor. So they should be like this. So let's save our file. And then let's look at that. Yep, there you go. So that'll help out a lot when you start blinking. All right, perfect. So now we need to recreate that on the other side of the face. So let's save another iteration. So let's do save as, and then we'll do, this is number 9. We're almost in double digits. All right, so we'll do joint. Again, this is going to be to the head. So you want to select head. You want to do eyelid, R, upper, create. Move this into position. Remember to change this because you don't want to be on the wrong one. And you're going to want this to be, excuse me. You're going to want this to be a triangle. You're going to want this to be a cube. So you can leave that how it is. And so what we're going to do is, we want it to be like this one. So let's change our scale automatically. Like that. And then let's just take these values since we know these are the right location. Go back to, yeah. I'm just copying over my values from the eyeball that we know is correct over on the right side of the head. And I am taking those values and putting them on what's going to be the upper eyelid mover. So you just need to copy. That's why I'm silent and I'm like, wait, you're too quiet. But if you've been following along, you know what I'm doing right now. You're probably doing it faster than me, or you're just going along with the same speed that I'm doing it, or slower, which is fine. So again, we're just going to copy these values, and we're going to paste them onto here. All right. So the other thing we want to do is, now that we have that, we just want to copy the values from this upper eyelid, which is -90, 125, 882, -90. So that's what we want to do. So we want to do -90, 12, 8.82. Is that right or wrong? -90. I don't know if that's right or not. I think that's wrong. 125, 882. 125, 882. All right, so that should be squared up. All right, awesome. You just want those to match, so you don't have to worry about offsets. Save. And let's make one more. And then this one's going to be to the head. There we go, head. And then we're going to say it's the suffix. We're going to do eyelid _r _lower. And then create. Same thing. We're going to, match what it is on the other side, but for now we're going to keep those other values. So let's keep what the actual size is first. Is 0.136. All right, and now again we're going to keep the same XYZ, just change the rotation. And go back to our wireframe so we can see what we're doing. And we also want to change this to triangle and keep it as a cube. All right, 7, 9. All right, so now we want to go back to the other eyeball over here, and we want to copy this. So this is -90, -67, 417, and then 90. So -90, -67, 417, -67.417, -90, and then this was 90. Let's double check those numbers. That looks good. Save your file. Test it out just to make sure. Go back to this mode. Select the eye controller for the upper eyelid, lower eyelid, rotation. Yep. Control Z. Save it. After that, we can do some eyebrows and a nose and mouth. So for the eyebrows, I would say, you got to do what works for your character, but I would say for this character, we may want to have 3 since there's a hard, this is common, there's a hard line right here, and then it breaks and tapers down along the contour of the face. Let's see. save our file first and foremost. File save, and then let's save another iteration. So this is gonna be 10. Save scene as 10. Um, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, 6 more bones, 7 more bones, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm gonna stop this here and pick this up in the morning, and we should be good to go. I don't want to do, just like you, I'm just gonna say, I don't want to work on this when it's too late. I'm already starting to feel tired. I don't want to make any mistakes. Again, save your file. I'm gonna save one more time. I'm gonna pick this up in a continuation video to get this set up. This was already a couple hours long, but you can already see how meticulous you need to be. And for this face, you know, you want to get it set up correct the first time around. You don't want to just throw joints in there. Every position matters for all joints. So I already know my blinking is getting slow, and I'm tired. So I'm going to go to sleep. I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you learned something new. Please stay tuned for the next video. And thanks. Bye.